For centuries, people accused of witchcraft were outcasts, misfits, or simply too knowledgeable for their time. But what if the so-called witches weren't casting spells? What if they were just the neurodivergent thinkers of their villages? What if they were the ones with ADHD? Think about it. Hyper-vigilance, heightened pattern recognition, an obsession with how things work, relentless curiosity. These traits, today seen as signs of ADHD, could have made someone seem unnervingly perceptive in a pre-scientific world. And if you gather a few of these people together, well, you've got yourself a coven. Welcome to Parallel, a mix of storytelling and thought-provoking what-if scenarios, combining narrative fiction and analysis that includes real-world science, philosophy, and potential real-world implications. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment so that you do not miss out on the next episode. Because, one reality, says T-Boom, is never enough.
They always say witches make pacts with the devil, but what's my sin? Seeing the storm before they did? Telling them the river would rise? Was it when I mixed rosemary and honey for fever? When I told Martha's husband the mold on the bread was making him sick? Is that what made me a witch? I should have kept my mouth shut. Should have pretended I didn't see. But how could I? How could I not speak, not ask why, not test and learn and know? And now they'll say it's because of me. The storm, the flood, the sickness, because I was foolish enough to see patterns where they saw nothing. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am different. Maybe that's why I see things they don't.
ADHD and the witch mindset, let's break it down. What makes a witch a witch? Firstly, hypervigilance or a sixth sense. ADHD brains are wired for hyper-awareness. In a time before weather apps and medical research, someone with a strong ability to notice tiny changes in the air, the behavior of animals, or the way someone looked before they got sick. Well, that would have seemed like magic. Imagine a woman in the 1600s who could predict a coming storm based on subtle shifts in the wind and sky. Or someone who sensed a villager's illness days before symptoms fully appeared. Without scientific explanations, it wasn't keen observation. It was witchcraft. Secondly, pattern recognition or reading people, reading nature. People with ADHD often have Tier 1 pattern recognition, an intuitive ability to see connections others miss. They might notice social cues others overlook or pick up on repeating patterns in nature. This could explain the witches who were excellent midwives, herbalists, or even just too good at reading people. Imagine a woman watching a villager's behavior and instantly recognizing guilt, deceit, or even an unspoken crush. In a deeply religious town, that's not social intelligence, that's sorcery. And thirdly, restless curiosity, or the science of spells. ADHD brains are wired for experimentation. These are the people who, in today's world, take things apart to see how they work. But in the past, that meant mixing herbs, testing concoctions, and figuring out what healed and what didn't. Now, picture a woman in a 17th century village, constantly collecting roots and leaves, making salves, testing which plants helped fevers and which ones caused hallucinations. She wasn't casting spells, she was an early scientist. But to the people around her, she was dabbling in the unnatural. In 1692, the Salem Witch Trials led to the deaths of 25 people and the imprisonment of over 200. But why were these specific people accused? Many were outsiders, unconventional women, herbalists, midwives, and outspoken individuals. Others were simply different, acting in ways that confused or unsettled the townsfolk. ADHD traits like impulsivity, blunt honesty, or an inability to conform to rigid social norms could have made someone an easy target. A woman who interrupted too much, asked too many questions, or didn't sit still in church might have been seen as possessed or under a spell. And when you start noticing one witch, you start to see them everywhere. Centuries later, pop culture still mocks the absurdity of witch trials. The classic Monty Python and the Holy Grail sketch captures this perfectly.
What makes you think she is a witch? Oh, she turned me into a newt! A newt? I got better.
The humor comes from the ridiculous logic. If she weighs the same as a duck, she must be a witch. But this isn't far from the reality of the trials. In Salem, evidence of witchcraft included acting strange, owning odd trinkets, or having a birthmark. But when you consider how ADHD individuals often collect odd objects, hyper-focus on unique hobbies, or act unpredictably, well, it's easy to see how these behaviors could have been misinterpreted as supernatural. Not all witches were feared, some were respected. Wise women, cunning folk, and healers were often sought after for their knowledge. They were the ones with useful magic, whether it was an herbal remedy, a well-timed warning, or simply seeing the world differently. In modern times, many traits once feared as witch-like are recognized as intelligence, innovation, and leadership. Hyper-focus drives discoveries. Pattern recognition fuels breakthroughs. Restless curiosity leads to new ideas. So maybe the witches weren't casting spells after all. Maybe they were just ahead of their time? If history teaches us anything, it's that those who think differently are often feared. The so-called witches of the past weren't casting spells. They were observing, experimenting, and understanding the world in ways that others couldn't. They saw patterns in the weather, understood herbal medicine, and had an instinct for reading people. All traits we now associate with neurodivergent minds, particularly ADHD. Even today, people with ADHD, especially women, are often misunderstood, even if they are just making teas from rosemary and honey and telling Martha about her husband. Often diagnosed late and then dismissed, or told they're too much or too scattered. But what if those very traits are what made them, and their so-called witch ancestors, exceptional? What if the only thing separating a witch from a wise woman is how society chooses to label her? Thank you so much for listening in to this episode of Parallel. The original idea for this episode came from Paul Sinclair. If you have an idea for a future episode, drop it in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, as it really does help the channel grow its audience. Until the next episode, remember, one reality is never enough.